Hey guys, it's Adrian, founder of the Pageant project. Excuse the collar, it's quite cold here in Australia, and I'm not a fan of the cold. I'm hanging out for summer. There's been a lot of discussion back and forth over the recent years. I mean, I've been involved in pageantry probably for like 6 or 7 years, going on 7 years. I think I started in about 2016, 2017. And obviously, there's been a lot of discussion about what people want to see changed, whether pageants are relevant anymore, yada, 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 yada. It's almost cliche at this stage. And Laura Clark, who, full disclosure, I know Laura. I've interviewed her and I've worked quite closely with a few of the Miss Earth USA contenders and title holders. But she put up a post which I thought was really interesting back in June 14. I was going to react to this sooner, but then the news about the Miss Scotland situation broke, and I wanted to address that. And by the way, I still haven't seen any response to that, which I don't think is a good sign. But Laura put up a post, and I'll share the screen with you so you can see the comments as I'm going through. But she put up a post here saying, Pageantland, what is something revolutionary you would like to see in the industry? Cancel all entry fees, eliminate age limits, pageant reality TV. Now, I'm going to go through as many of these as I can. I haven't really looked at these. I just had a quick glance through because I wanted to give my honest sort of not unthoughtful, but I wanted to give you sort of my real and authentic response to these. But I'm sure some of them are going to be very similar, if not the same. So I will edit this down so that I'm not answering the same question 5 times. So if you see me skip some questions, that will be why. And then there may be some that I just don't feel comfortable giving a thought on or don't want to address for one reason or another. But here we go. And I'll just go from the top. So cancelling entry fees would be amazing. This was a huge draw to MAO back in the day. And then they added CMN. I don't know what CMN fundraising is. $100 per local at the time. And that basically made it inaccessible as a college student and later an unemployed teacher working very, very part-time. Okay. And pageant entry fees are quite complicated and can vary a lot depending on the country and the system. So I know that there are some pageants that I've seen here in Australia, for example, there's an entry fee and then that's it. That's all you pay. You may have to pay for accommodation or something like that. But then you have on the other end like systems where that entry fee is only the beginning of the story, and then you have sponsorship fees, and then you might have registration fees, and then you have optional fees, and then if you want your photos back, you have photo fees, and then on and on and on and on. Now, I am of the belief that pageants should actually be run as a not-for-profit, on a non-for-profit basis. Now, that doesn't mean that the director has to pay out of their own pocket. That what that means is that what that means is that any profit is supposed to be rolled back into the organization itself. Now, that may not legally or technically exactly be the definition of a non-for-profit, but what I'm not comfortable with and what I've seen, I think, some poor behaviors stem from is people using the pageant as an excuse to squeeze as much money out of the girls as possible. Now, there's main reasons for that. One is that it just sort of gives a free license to people to charge these girls exorbitant amounts of money for things like, for example, headshots or putting them into the program, etc., etc., etc. And I'm not sure that those fees are justified. Now, obviously, there has to be some middle ground where I'm not expecting people to do it for free, but I would like to see that it's run on a more not-for-profit basis so that it's not where profit is not the, let's say, the top motive or the only motive. I really would like to see pageants run more as an ongoing system. I like the idea of a sorority where girls can enter, or a scholarship system where girls can enter year after year after year and continue to develop. I'm not sure I want to see that being used as I'm not sure that goes hand in hand with a profit-based system. The other reason that I would prefer to see it as a not-for-profit basis is based on the assumption that prices would go down somewhat or there would be less fees charged is that it's less exclusionary. And I think, as this person was alluding to, it was unaccessible to her as an unemployed teacher. Now, there are I mean, you could say that if you're unemployed, you shouldn't be entering a pageant. That's a separate argument. But leaving that to the side, there's no doubting that it's exclusionary to the point of discrimination if you're going to start charging a lot of money. Now, I really have an issue with people's voting, for example, because that is almost always on a dollar basis. So you pay an amount to register a vote. Now, that clearly favors the people who have money behind them, whether it's a rich parent, a rich employer, and it really, to me, has absolutely no bearing on whether the person's going to be a good title holder or not. All it is an indicator that the person has money at their beck and call. Now, if it was them that had to raise the money themselves through grift or some fundraising, that's one thing. But when you can literally just have rich mum and dad fork you $30,000 into your fundraiser, and that's going to, put you into the top 12 or whatever it is. I mean, in gaming circles, we call that pay to win, and it's looked down on because it means you basically got no skill, so you have to pay to win. And I'm really uncomfortable with that. So that's my thoughts on entry fees. I mean, canceling entry fees. I mean, that my question is, I think that my end point with that is, I would like to see pageants run more on a non-for-profit basis so that fees across the board sort of came down. I would like to see a lot of transparency with what the fees are, what the additional fees will be, what those fees cover. And I do find that having high fees, in particular paid for voting, is exclusionary in some ways, and I'm just not a fan of that. Okay, so that was a really long answer. Let's see if I can go through these a bit faster. All right, allowing those without kids or marriage to compete in Miss regardless of age. Without kids or marriage to compete in Miss regardless of age. Okay, that one's a difficult one. So, I mean, Universe has changed, obviously, to allow married women to compete. I interviewed one of the first mothers who will be competing in the Miss Universe GB system just the other night. I think the trick with that is, or the thing you have to answer is, why should we allow some restrictions and not others? So what this person is suggesting is you can compete in Miss as long as you're not married and you don't have kids up to the age of 80 or 90 or 100. Now, I'm not sure why the age restrictions should be different to a children restriction or a marriage restriction. That's my point with that. So I think that one needs a bit more thought. I mean, there's a lot of people who've liked that comment, but I would guess that that's mainly people who don't fit into the current age restrictions, or let's say have a daughter or a friend who don't fit because of the age restrictions. I'm not saying I'm against or for, but I think when it comes to restrictions in general, we need to think why some restrictions are allowed and why some are allowed, why some are enforced, why some are removed, etc., etc. I don't think you can just say, well, let's remove this restriction and not remove another. Pageantry needs to be televised, period. We always speak about representation, but it's much deeper than just allowing more body types and skin colors to compete. That is my washing being dried. Compete/win. It's all for nothing if the world can't see it. You can say, okay, my answer to this is yes, it would be great if pageantry was televised, but I think what you have to understand is there's a reason it's not being televised, and that's because not enough people are going to watch it, which means there's not enough money. So there's not enough people watching, and therefore the advertisers. I mean, when you watch TV, generally, like in the old days, it's free. How is it paid for? By the advertisers, and if the advertisers don't want to place advertisements against a pageant because there aren't enough people viewing or the people watching aren't the right demographic, that's why it's not being televised. So I'm not sure that we're ever going to get to the stage where pageantry will be televised again, but I'm also not sure that that necessarily should be the end game, because television is kind of going the way of the dinosaur at the moment. I know a lot more people who will watch YouTube or Hulu or Netflix or Amazon Prime, like Prime Video, than watching free-to-air TV. Like, frankly, I don't remember the last time I watched TV. So I think what we need to think about is how are we going to get pageantry, assuming you want this, how are we going to get pageantry in front of more eyeballs? That's the question. I don't think we should really necessarily chase television I think that's more legacy media, and I don't think that's the way of the future. I think the way of the future is going to be new media and keeping it very, very interactive and keeping it up to date. I think one of the issues is generally pageantry when it's not televised by a network. The production values are a bit hit and miss. Very often it seems like someone's just got a mobile phone at the back of the stage and is holding it up and it's shaky and it cuts in, cuts out. The sound's horrible. So I think there has to be some medium where we don't necessarily rely on a TV network to pick us up, but we need a bit more production values than a mobile phone. And I think if pageantry evolves to become relevant or build its relevancy and becomes hugely popular again, then the television itself, the televising rights will follow. I mean, there's no way that people are going to leave that on the table. So, and you've seen that with Netflix shelling out millions and hundreds of millions of dollars for things that they think are going to be viewed by a lot of people. So, television, I would argue that's a bit more legacy, but I do agree that if we're going to survive and thrive as an industry, we do need to get in front of more eyeballs. And how we do that, well, we're going to have to stay relevant with new media, and I think become more and more interactive as well to embrace that new media, not just use new media as a replacement for old media and just televise it, because I think we're a bit past that. Judges that give real time audio comments like they do in dance competitions. You get the audio synced to your performance, and on playback you can hear their comments in the moment. I would pay extra. Okay, maybe make buying ad pages optional. So we've got two here. I love that first one. Judges that give in real-time audio comments, because that requires transparency. And I'm generally a huge fan of anything that gives transparency. I would like something similar like that with scoring. The comparison I make is, figure skating at the Olympics or gymnastics at the Olympics. You do your thing, you do your vault, you do your routine, then you get your scores, bang, 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 right there and then, and you actually get to see which judge gave you which score. I think it's like way past time that we have something like that, so we can remove any sort of behind the scenes tomfoolery. And that really is also takes away all the power out of those power brokers behind the scenes, those shady people, and all the scandals that tend to happen. It's because, if you do this with me, then you'll win. You can't do that if there's transparency. So I think transparency is good for multiple reasons. I think it's useful to the competitors. I mean, I would want feedback as a competitor, honest feedback. I don't want to be told I was great when I sucked. And also it solves a lot of the corruption issues and scandal issues that have been happening behind the scenes. And then maybe make buying ad pages optional. I think that comes back again to my whole thesis that I think pageants should be a not-for-profit basis. Buying ad pages, again, my point is I don't really understand why that is a thing. If I was a sponsor, I wouldn't really be interested in being put in a pageant brochure. It's just not getting the eyeballs that I really would want. So again, ad pages seems a bit archaic. I think if I wanted sort of exposure or something like that, I'd rather have it something on social media, yada, yada, yada. And the other thing is I've seen some ad page fees and they do seem exorbitant. And I say that because if you put a similar ad in a publication that had similar exposure to that pageant program, generally the cost would be a lot less, and you'd probably get more exposure. So again, I think it's that whole exclusionary thing, and ad pages being what they are. I'm not a fan where it forces a girl who, let's say, doesn't have rich parents and it forces them out or they can't do it and they're at a disadvantage. So yeah, and then you made it optional. Is it really optional, or is it that optional where you don't have to do it? But if you don't do it, there's no way you'd win, in which case it's not really optional. Let's move on. Definitely pageant reality TV. Follow contestants, blah, get a glimpse. Okay, I really like that idea. And Miss Multiverse, I believe, does that to some extent. And I had a look, and for some reason, I don't know if I was looking at the wrong thing, but their videos seem to have very few views for what I think could be a really good idea. Now, the issue you see with that is reality TV is almost always based on sort of, I don't want to say the lowest common denominator, but it kind of has to be scandalous in some way. Like if you look at a cooking show, that's the only reality TV I have any exposure to. I have no interest in watching dating reality TV shows. But if you have a look, they hardly ever pick people because they're really good contestants. They tend to pick one or two people who are really strong contestants, one or two who are really dumb and stupid and say the stupid things because that makes the highlights. Then one or two people who you know are going to have arguments with each other all the time because, again, that makes the highlights. If you took our current pageants and made them reality TV, I'm not sure that there's enough drama and scandal to keep people hooked week after week after week. I think reality TV really does need kind of that drama and scandal to hook people, and I'm not sure that we want that in pageantry. I mean, having said that, maybe there's enough volume, enough demand for people to just want to tune in to see the behind the scenes of what's going on behind the pageant. Um, but then you do have the issue of pretty much everything would then have to be exposed. If you're having people and it's reality TV, even if you control where the cameras are, which obviously you would do, if there's a fight going on, if there's a scandal erupting, pageantry in general is still not an industry that embraces transparency, largely speaking. And as much as I'd love to see pageant reality TV, and I've been toying with that idea, I think there'd have to be some thought given to exactly how it's executed. But I do think it's a good idea. Let's move to the next one. Okay, age limits for the big international pageants. There should be no reason why women who are in their 30s. Okay, all right. So again, the restriction. I do agree that, especially in this day and age, there's little visible difference very often between a woman who's in her 30s and a woman who's in her 20s. And if anything, a woman in her 30s, all things being equal, will have more life experience than a woman in her 20s, and therefore may make a better role model. But I'm not sure why, again, we just focus on lifting the age limit, but we should continue to enforce the marriage limit or the kids limit. I question that. I don't really see a logical argument that says, yes, the age limit should go, but no, the kids and marriage limit should stay. I think it's difficult to argue for to keep one of those restrictions but then get rid of the others. That's the only thing I have. But I do agree in general that like an age limit of 28, I've never understood that. Like I'd understand 30 more than 28. You know what I mean? So look, in general, I'm all for lifting restrictions within reasons. I think there should be some restrictions, but that's just my thought in general. Like if you're going to lift one, you need to give thought to, well, should the others stay or should the others go as well? Video interview, something girls have school sometimes girls have school and can't make the whole week, so it'd be nice if they can come and compete in the main competition. Um, I agree. I think video interview is more common now because of the pandemic. I think a lot of systems were forced to adopt video interviews, and a lot of them have realized actually it's more time efficient way of doing it. And you can also have judges, for example, from overseas or something like that, sit in on the interview. Whereas if it was only in person, that wouldn't be possible. Now, having said that, I also think interviews are wildly underdone and should be a lot longer so that we can really screen the girls and get to know them better. There's no way you can tell me that you can really get to know who a girl is or who anyone is in 2 or 3 minutes. I don't care how good of an interviewer you are. But I do agree, like video interviews, I think they're the way of the future. I think you're going to see them being phased in more and more as it is. Now, Tracy has said, different judging panel for interview and stage, or have interview last. That way, on stage is judged without the judges having a bias toward a girl they liked in interview. That's interesting. I think my question with that is, firstly, a different judging panel. I think, regardless of everything else, that could be interesting because some people are more qualified to judge interview and some people are more qualified to judge stage. I would be much more comfortable being used as an interview judge than a stage judge, for one. The point about without judges having a bias toward a girl they liked in interview, that's an interesting one. I guess my question is, do you want the bias to be there in the first place? Because if a girl has done well in interview, don't you want to make sure that you give some sort of weighting to that? But I guess, and that's lying in how much you weigh the interview. So I do take this point, and I think anywhere where we can get rid of, let's say, subconscious bias, I think overall is a good thing. So that's an interesting one I haven't thought of. And I'm not sure if that's actually done. So that would be an interesting one. I don't mind low cost entry fees, but extra fees to participate can go away. I would love to see a behind the scenes pageant TV. I think I've addressed both of those. Judges that can judge without their personal taste. Truly judge a girl, not what she looks like or is wearing. Yes, judge her walk, her talk, her skills. I never want to see a comment. She's just not my type. Well, I completely agree with that. Um, I would say, look, here's my thesis on pageant judges. I think a lot of them have way too big of an ego. I don't like people being called pageant celebrity judges or pageant experts. I hate it when someone calls me a pageant expert. I really I detest it. I'm someone who's seen pageants and interviewed hundreds of people, but I just think it's a giant ego. What I'm really against is when the pageant celebrates its judges more than its contestants. That really irks me. Like when you announce celebrity judge, why aren't we focused on your contestants? When more of the focus, the limelight goes on your judges and who's emceeing your pageant and who's going to perform at your pageant, you've taken all that limelight that should be focused on your contestants. No, so I completely agree with the "just not my type" comment. I'm really sorry that this person had to go through that. I think that's completely unacceptable. As I mean, that's a dating comment. That's not a pageant judging comment. But I do think it comes from pageant judges who are too busy fulfilling their own ego, chasing their own ego, having their own ego stroked, rather than being professional and actually taking that profession seriously. And I've had some experience with that, by the way, working with judges who are just ego stroking. Second, make sure the judges know exactly what the owner of the system wants. Amen. It's gotten bad these days with winners that can't even tell someone what the system is about or morals. Yes, I agree with that. I think, again, this comes down to training your judges, and I think judges should do their homework. Lastly, judges that actually watch the girls, ask others about them, follow social medias. Hello. Mingle without anyone knowing. Hello. Yes, I find it very uncomfortable. I've had some experience with people thinking I was a judge for a pageant and then suddenly being very, very friendly. And I'm not stupid. I can tell. Like, you wouldn't normally have said hello to me and now you're my best friend. Go away. All right. So, yeah, I'm not following the social media. Can we just talk about, if you're going to judge a pageant, go and look at the social medias. And girls, if you're entering a pageant, clean up your social medias. So, amen to that. I know this is hard to come by. I don't think it's that hard to come by. I think we make it hard to come by because we want to use celebrity pageant judges or Z-list celebrity TV dropouts. I really hate that. I'm sorry if I offend you, if you're a pageant director who loves using celebrity judges, but put your limelight on the contestants, not your judging panel. God's sakes, do your jobs. Increase. Yeah, I'm passionate about that one. Increase age limits, lower entry fees. Okay, I think we've covered both of those. I'm broadly in agreement with that. Requiring headshots to be more natural and a true representation of the contestant. We want to see the real woman behind the stage makeup. Yeah, sure. I mean, look, I guess if you have access to a really good makeup artist, there could be it could be disadvantageous to someone who doesn't have those resources. But, overall, if all the girls are wearing makeup and they have the same photographer, same makeup artist, broadly speaking, using the makeup artists available at the system, then, I would still see it as long as it's a fair playing ground. If one contestant has access to a private makeup artist that's charging $1,000 a session, and then another one has to do her own makeup, not because she wants to, but because she can't afford, that is more of a problem for me. I do understand the drive to want to see the real woman behind the stage makeup, and I'm broadly speaking, I'm all for that. But there is a time for glam as well, and I think pageants can celebrate glam within reason. I don't think that there's a huge problem with that. Again, as long as it's fair. National pageants should be located in central time zones so contestants aren't completely jet lagged. Okay. Well, yeah. I mean, I would say that's a difficult one. I would say that's probably just something that we have to deal with. I think whichever time zone you put a pageant in, someone's going to be disadvantaged by that. And I think it's going to be up to each individual contestant to play that as they will. So if you think you're going to be jet lagged, then get there like a day ahead or 2 days ahead. Yes, it would cost more, but no one said life's fair. That's what my mum used to say to me all the time. And if you look at, for example, I know tennis, and obviously with the tennis tour, professional tour, there are, I mean, the tour goes for 11 months of the year, and it's only really for 1 month that it's in Australia. So you could say that Australian, tennis players are at a disadvantage that way. But we've never really complained that, hey, we should move the tour to Australia because it's just the way you go. So I think part of that is, I think my opinion on that is, when you enter the industry, there are some hurdles to jump through. I understand that's maybe not fair to someone who's far away. It's unfortunate, but that's just the way it is. But I rank that lower on my list of don't likes than lack of transparency and exorbitantly high entry fees, as an example. Uh, we've got eliminate age limit. That's a recurring one, and I do think it's interesting why people are harking on the age limit one more so than the marriage and kids one. Um, I'm not saying it should be either or. I'm just interested in that. No one so far has said married with kids should be allowed to enter, for example, in the Miss division. Judges getting to see contestants outside of interview, interacting with other people. Yeah, I've heard anyway of big pageants sort of having not spies, but where the staff who interact with the girls throughout the day or throughout the weeks, they get a say in who gets voted through, or they can at the very least tell the directors or the judges when a girl is not behaving well. So I do think that's important. And I think that comes down to the larger sort of rubric of how we're going to judge the girls over a day, a week, and does the judging criteria really, really enforce what it says we're looking for? So if we say we're looking for a girl who is kind, has good values, doesn't bully people, etc., 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 you can't really glean that from a 3-minute interview, can you? So I do take that point, and I think that's an interesting one. Implementation is just because it's great to have a great idea, but then the implementation does matter. How are you going to implement that? So in that case, do you need the judges mixing with the girls for the entirety of the pageant? Do you keep the judges' identities secret? If you don't keep them secret, how do you explain why these random people are, hanging around the pageant? So good idea. The implementation might be tricky. Doesn't mean it's not worth considering, just how to implement. Also, I would like to see ladies wearing recycled outfits instead of another segment. Okay, I think that means they want to see recycled outfits in the other main segments rather than just as a recycled, here's our eco segment as an example. Fair enough. I do think there's something to be said about a lot of money and, let's say, large carbon footprint being created by pageant outfits. But that's, yeah. It's a good idea. It's a good idea. All of the above mentioned in post. Scoring should be provided to contestants/audience in real time, like the Olympics. This is what I was saying before, by the way. This would hold judges accountable for fair scoring and allow the system to be transparent with outcomes. What I really find funny about this is how many people will scream that that's a terrible idea, but it's generally the people I found, it's the directors and the judges who scream that's a terrible idea. It's so rarely the girls themselves that scream it's a terrible idea. I had one director tell me, "Oh, but if they're a first time, contender and they come in and they get a bad score, they might be dissuaded from entering." And I get that, but that's real life. And you got to weigh that against the cost of having scores that are completely hidden from everybody. No one knows how they got to, and it's completely open to corruption. I do think sometimes we need to have a discussion about toughening up. And if you got a bad score and it was deserved, I'm of the mind that I would want to know that so I know how to improve. I don't need rude feedback, by the way. So like that one was like, it's not my type. I don't need that. There's no place for that. But, tell me why I got 1 out of 10 for my walk. And then I can go and I might not even agree with it, but at least give me something to work on. Don't let me go out there, work my butt off, do my best, and then I don't win and that's all I know. I think I really dislike that. I would not enter a pageant, by the way, with that as the pretext. I want my scores and I want them in real time so they're not open to corruption. How to implement that? Well, it'd be nice if we could do it like the Olympics scoreboard. The only issue I have with that is, yeah, if a girl gets, because the pageant industry, I think as a whole, is probably not really ready for that. Some people, anyway. Imagine if your parent and your daughter's up on stage, she does her walk, and then she gets a 1 out of 10. Ooh, I mean, it's honest, but it's awkward. So that, I think, and if it's like a 13-year-old, not a 25-year-old or an 8-year-old, so maybe there needs to be some thought given to, for some ages, it's appropriate, and then for others, it's not. Or maybe some way of showing the scores where it's still transparent, but it hides the low end, so to speak. And maybe the utter transparency is there upon request, not behind a fee, by the way, but on request, so that if there's something that's really low, it's not necessarily flashed in public. Increased age limits for Miss. Okay, I've discussed that one. Broadly, I'm in agreement with that. Highly inclusive set of candidates and judges. I think we're kind of doing that anyway. Reality show, yeah. Organization transparency, yes. Yeah, I'm all for transparency, and I think everything listed there, I broadly would say I agree with. I would also say when pageants screw up, there should be accountability, and they should address it rather than ducking for cover, which is my point with the Miss Scotland issue last week. Scores should be displayed publicly. Okay, possible to display them without giving out personal identifiable information. I think that's a good compromise. Organizations should reduce their expectations on social media with delegates. Social media is a cause for mental for those in pageantry, reducing more and social media with delegates. So basically saying that reduce the expectations on social media with delegates, and if social media is important, hire a professional. That there's two ways to run with that. The problem is in this day and age, social media is incredibly important for any business. You need the exposure. And then the other argument to that is exactly what's listed here, which is that social media is definitively bad and objectively bad for the mental health, particularly of young girls, because they are more prone to comparison than probably any other age group. So what I will say, I definitely dislike forced sponsor posts. Like when the girls have to post because it's a sponsor, I dislike that greatly, because you can always tell it's a sponsored post, and it makes me not want to buy the product. If you're a sponsor out there watching, by the way, so social media, I think they need to be given some thought to educating the girls. I do think there's a balance between getting them to post like 5 times a day, but then a girl saying, "Well, I only want to post once a month." I think there does need to be a discussion about what the appropriate balance is. And then beyond that, I do think then, because social media still is largely the Wild West. And that's largely because most of the people in charge of pageants are the older generation and aren't honestly that in touch with what it's really like to run social media. They're just not. They don't know what it's like to live, breathe, eat every second with social media. So I would like to see a balance brought to it. I don't know whether the answer is to bring in an expert. I would leave it more up to the girl. I wouldn't say I just leave it up to the girls, because again, then if they post once a year, that's not really great. But I think there needs to be a discussion of what the expectations are, what the possible mental health ramifications could be, and I definitely think there needs to be a pathway set if someone is bullied or their mental health is being affected, that there is a mental health professional on call that the girls know and trust that they can immediately connect with. And I would like to see that being proactive. So I would like the girls to go through some sort of prep workshop to not only inform them how to use social media, what the best ways to use it, what the best ways to protect themselves are, but also if you have issues with mental health or bullying, this is the dedicated person to go to. And by the way, I'm not sure I want that to be someone necessarily on staff, because if, let's say you have on staff is the mother of one of the other contestants, and that's a contestant that bullied you, not great. Okay, so someone who can be like an objective third party. Okay, entirely inclusive. Okay. I mean, that is the largely politically correct way of moving, accept absolutely everyone and everybody. I will say, at the risk of sounding not so great, that I do believe that pageants get to set their own restrictions because they are private enterprises. And I don't think that directors should be forced to adopt beliefs that do not fit in with their own. That's just me. I do not like imposing whatever your beliefs are. I don't like the idea of imposing them on other people. And obviously, like discrimination, which means, and you have to define discrimination as well. I mean, when someone, if you told you have discriminating tastes, that actually has a positive connotation. But then obviously discriminating against someone because of the color of their skin or their gender or other reasons, that's not got a great connotation. But I am not generally in favor of telling someone who is running a private enterprise what they have to do. I think if a system abides with your is in alignment with your beliefs and values, show them that by supporting them. And if a system doesn't align with your beliefs and values or doesn't allow you to enter, then of course you're allowed to, by all means, vocalize your opinion. But I don't like the idea of trying to shame someone or pressuring someone to do something that is against their own beliefs and values. I know that won't be everyone's take on that, but that's going to be my take on that. Mandatory ad fees and all the optional competitions. Well, I've talked about ad fees, and as I said, I think they should be run as a non-for-profit pageants and all the optional competitions. Well, I would assume that's if they're paid for, so sure. I would like to see, again, the money requirement being dropped, because pageantry is hugely expensive. Not money requirement being dropped meaning it's free, but that high price bracket that I think excludes or intimidates a lot of people. Lunch interviews, fun and get to know people. Extend age limits, we've talked about that. Fun and get to know people. It was interesting. I was talking to one of the Gibraltarian queens. I think it was Miss Grand Gibraltar. And she was saying back in the day, the girls would come out and have a dinner on stage. And I thought that was really cool. Yeah, why not? We should introduce some other elements to the pageant because we should try to stay relevant or build our relevancy. We've got pageant reality TV. Okay. As I said, it's a great idea. I'm just not sure that it's necessarily TV is the route to go. I think we need to embrace the new media. I would like to find pageants that are natural. That is, pageant with no plastic surgery, no excessive makeup or props like extensions and lash. Okay. I would say, wow. I would say I'm broadly in agreement with that, and here's why. Look, first off, what you do with your own body, completely your choice, not my place to say. But where I do have the issue is if you are a title holder, or even if you're not, but if you're advocating to love your own body no matter what, but then it transpires that you've had plastic surgery to augment your breasts or to fix your nose. And I'm not talking about corrective surgery, by the way. Like, for example, I've had I've had orthodontic work done on my teeth because my teeth were terrible as a child. I've had 8 adult teeth removed. Now, that's not life-saving surgery, so that is cosmetic surgery, although it does have a utility value. So, if you need to have your deviated septum fixed, that's one thing. But I think we can agree that having your boobs enlarged doesn't really serve a functional value. It's more of an aesthetic thing. Now, again, that should be your choice. If you're a consenting adult, you get to do what you want with your body. I do have an issue, and I do think some thought needs to be given to if you're telling young girls that they should love their body no matter what, but then by any objective measure, you are already deemed physically attractive by society, and then you still want to have plastic surgery done, primarily for the reason of trying to increase your chance of winning a pageant, I do think there is an issue there. I have seen some girls be very transparent about their plastic surgery, and on one hand, as I said, I like transparency, but if you have a 12 or 13-year-old girl who's dealing with confidence issues and she sees a title holder who's beautiful, feeling like they have to have their boobs enlarged or their nose job done in order to feel like they have a chance to win, or basically in order to feel like they actually are beautiful when everyone else thinks they already are beautiful, then I think that is sending a very dangerous message to the younger, impressionable ones. I'm not so worried about it from look because everyone's free to do their own thing. So I don't really have a moral conversation in any ways. Those are just my concerns. Is where you have a young, impressionable following, preteens, teens, or 8, 9 year olds, and they're kind of getting the message from you that, well, you're never enough unless you get the plastic surgery. I also really dislike having plastic surgeons, cosmetic surgery, or teeth whiteners as sponsors. I just don't like it, particularly when there are no mental health sponsors. Let me put it that way. I would love to see mental health sponsors or some sort of sponsors that stood for further education or further employment, much more so than I'm comfortable having cosmetic surgery sponsors or teeth whitening sponsors or cosmetic dental sponsors, which seems to be all the rage at the moment. So I'm sure some people are going to hate me for that. But I think if we're going to live by the values that we're talking about, that's the only way forward. I don't have any real issue with extensions and lashes because they're not permanent. But I do understand that it's not being honest, I guess, or completely transparent. But we're living in a pageant is about glam, so I guess you have to draw the line somewhere. And I kind of draw the line at telling, at putting on young girls this idea in any way, shape, or form that you need plastic surgery in order to be beautiful. I really am very scared about that conversation. Okay, age limits we've done. Constructive feedback, yeah, well, constructive feedback, full stop, right? Because very often you don't get any feedback at all, and then other times people just, as we said before, not my type, which is not constructive. It's not even feedback. Eliminate categorization based on marital status. Okay, there you go. Someone has said something about marital status. As I said, I think all these restrictions should be questioned, and I think a lot of them at the end of the day are just throwbacks to the origins of pageantry and have no place in modern day. More pageants with a novice division. That's an interesting one because I don't think it should necessarily just be age, because there could be someone who's 25-year-old, it's their first pageant, no experience walking or anything like that. They could be up against people who've competed at Universe. So yeah, having some sort of a beginner division. I mean, you have that with sports. So that, again, implementation of that could be difficult, but overall, yeah, I'm in agreement with that. Now, age limit we've covered. Reality TV we've covered. A pageant reality show again covered. Although having one like that that's more in depth, I think I'm more on board with making that happen than the immediate reality TV show. I would like to see more of a behind the scenes than a reality, like a junky reality TV show. As I said, I'm not a fan of Scandal, and I think really for the reality TV show to take, it needs to be scandalous or have some drama. Whereas a behind the scenes show or documentary, that's definitely something that I've given some thought to. Age limit, transparency, and scoring. Okay, I'm going to try and get through these. I think these are all pretty much the same. Pre-competition interviews being a norm to better vet competitors. Yeah, I look. I like the idea of that. I do think there needs to be. I mean, this person is put to better vet. I use the term screening process, and I think what I would like to see pageants do is work out what they really want from their title holders, and then have some sort of screening process that ensures that anyone who gets to the actual judging stage meets all the basic minimum criteria, so that whoever you pick, you could pick anyone on the stage and they would be a good representation of your system. I do like that idea. I don't like the idea of having 100 people on stage and someone said there's like 80 of them are, they use the term cannon fodder, which basically means they have no chance of winning, but they're there to sort of pad out the numbers to give you money, again, money, and to make the winner look better because they beat 100 girls versus beating 20 girls. So I'm in agreement with that one, I would say. Get rid of required sponsor promotion. I've said that. I don't like that. And it's super obvious as well. Real-time realistic feedback from judges. Yes. Look back on what they've been doing. How long is this just for a pageant, or do they truly care? Yeah, I would say yes. So if you're looking at someone's social media, looking back in history and seeing how they actually been advocating for the cause they purport to care about for more than the past 2 months, difficulty with that is you can remove your social media history. So that one's a bit harder to judge. Get rid of age limits. The fees, the money again, cancelling entry fees, age limit. More price isn't paid for travel expenses, especially if it's for her platform. Yeah, I mean, I would generally, again, part of the non-profit is doesn't mean you don't make a profit. It means a profit is used to further develop your organization. And I definitely would like to see some of that money, if possible, being used to have the title holder or royal court, whatever it is you have them be able to have more opportunities. I would much rather that than have that put into I don't I don't know. This has been going too long. I don't know what I'm saying, but I would definitely like to see the money put back into the title holders and the girls in general, much more so than let's say teeth whitening or fake tan. Okay, let's go. I'm happy. Type of okay package. Seem like girls could pay their way to the top spot. When factoring scores, this is an interesting one. I think a lot of systems should consider leadership roles that the girl is implementing within her career. I do like that one a lot uh, because I think it's all too easy to say you're a leader and a role model, and then sometimes when you look at what the girl's doing, there's no evidence of that in what they're doing. So, and I really would love to see more more pageant title holders who are sort of intricately woven into a meaningful career and meaningful contribution to society. I don't like the idea of a girl just winning because she looks the best on stage or walks the best on stage or talks the best for 3 minutes, but then has no active involvement in society or constructive involvement in society outside of that. And I think for pageantry to have legitimacy, having more title holders that have really interesting careers or an established career would be a good thing. Reality TV show, discrimination, randomized order and competition with no sashes. Well, I hate the idea of sash factor, full stop. But again, transparency. This is why I keep banging on transparency, because I think transparency knocks a lot of other potential issues out of the park. Unbiased and inclusive judging. Okay, should not be based on the judge's personal absolutely. Yeah, I'm surprised honestly that we're still talking about this as an industry and there hasn't been some way to act. No system that I really know of has really gone out of their way to enforce to make sure that the judging is as objective as possible, like and as effective as possible. So picking a judging panel that, and when I say diverse, I'm not just talking about male female. I'm talking about from different walks of life, and then also educating them on what the system is looking for and really taking that seriously. I think the judges need at least like a 1 or 2 hour workshop or a 1 day workshop to, if they don't know anything about the pageant industry or the system that's supposed to be judging, they shouldn't be judging. So, and I hate the idea of sash factor. I don't think a girl should walk on stage with an advantage because she's from a particular country or a disadvantage because she's not from a particular country. I've never understood that at all. Social media as a judge score? Well, yes and no. I mean, if a girl is effective at social media, that means she can be a better mouthpiece for your system. On the other hand, some girls build their social media by doing things that aren't necessarily in alignment with a pageant's values. So that one's a difficult one. I think you can argue that both ways. I think that needs more consideration. Distribution. Okay. Okay, so we're talking about, again, sort of TV rights or getting views, having some sort of broadcast. I've covered that. Age limits. Judges should stop being introduced before the pageant. They shouldn't be announced. Well, yeah. Again, I think way too many judges are doing this to stroke their own egos. So I'm in agreement with that. By and large, transparency. Well, on a national pageant, they allowed girls below 5'4", but international pageant, they're not qualified because they are below 5'4". Yeah, I mean, that's just silly to me. Like, how I don't understand how that could happen. I don't think you should be allowed to compete under false pretenses. And I mean false pretenses as in the system allows you to think one thing, but then it's not true. But that's just base level honesty. I really hope that us as an industry can get beyond that, and then it should go without saying that you shouldn't be taking a girl's money to compete if she can't win. No judges, just a fun event showcasing style. Yeah, but I think I would keep that separate to a pageant. I do think there needs to be more opportunities for pageant girls to come together and just do their stuff without the pressure of competition, which is, again, like why I like the idea of sorority, because it's all about the girls coming together, building each other up, and you just add a runway to that and, some fashion to that and enjoy rather than having to compete. In the Philippines, joining major national pageants are all free. Ooh, well, I mean, America is not the Philippines, is what I'd say to that, just at a base level. And the level of pageant fanhood in Philippines is probably the highest out of any country in the world. So I don't necessarily think that's a great idea or like a feasible idea, but I do think, as I said, I would like to see pageants run on a not-for-profit basis, which again doesn't mean they make no money or that they lose money. It means that the money that's made is rolled back into the organization and into the girls. Full scoring reports. I would recommend keeping age divisions. Okay. Well, no popular $1 vote contests. I said that. I don't like that. I know it seems to be accepted in the pageant industry. I don't know why. I think it's because it makes money. And again, that's another reason for me to say I don't like the for-profit motif of most pageants. Entry fees are needed because pageants are a business. Agreed. Reality TV ruins the experience when competing. Probably. Solid and pageant. Okay, that's interesting because this person is saying basically what I said before, which was that not every pageant title needs to do everything. And again, I agree with that. I think they are private enterprises, and I think a director should be allowed to run the pageant as they see fit. And the public judges, if the public doesn't like how a pageant is being run, they won't go to it. Eventually, they will go somewhere else. There's room for growth, but drastic changes are immediate red flag. So again, see, this is why the implementation is important, because I said, yes, there's probably the fees are probably too high, at least in the worlds that I live in. So entry fees are needed, yes, because pageants are a business. So again, it's like, okay, we don't want to extort the girls, but we still need some money coming in. This is not like, hey, let's do it for free. Because as this person had said, like great prizes, for example, well, they need to come from somewhere. And then reality TV, we do want to get pageantry in front of more eyeballs, but I do agree that reality TV would ruin the experience when competing, because you'd have to have cameras behind stage, and there's all sorts of things that you want to be very careful of behind the stage at a pageant, especially when it's filming. So yes, a lot of the ideas we covered, I hope I'm towards the end, have been great ideas, but the implementation would be very tricky and needs to be given some serious thought. Pageant reality TV, more acceptance limit. Okay, so phew, that took longer than I thought, but there are a lot of comments there. But I would love to hear if there are any ideas that you have to revolutionize the pageant industry that weren't really covered there. Obviously, there were some repetitive themes in that comment section. A lot around age limits, a lot around the costs, and a lot around pageant reality TV or broadcast rights and things like that. So I think those are some of the areas where I've given a lot of thought as well, and how I would like to see what I personally believe. But again, it's it's the implementation. An idea can be very good in theory, but if you can't implement it, then it's not maybe it's not such a great idea at the end of the day, because we do need to be able to implement it. So, for example, while the idea that everyone walks away from a pageant happy, that's a great idea, but how do you actually make that happen? It's impossible. So, I would love to hear your thoughts. That's the end of my rant, because by pretty much any metric, pageant numbers are down, viewership numbers are down, and that means money is down. And that also, by the way, means quality overall goes down. If you have fewer people competing, that doesn't generally make the quality of the competition stronger. It makes it a bit weaker. So, and if you're like me, you want to compete against the best of the best. So, how are we going to get more women into pageantry? But not only that, but like, just how are we going to attract, let's say, demographics that haven't really looked at entering pageantry before? Maybe more women who are in the workforce, or whatever it is that you believe. Because I do think that overall the pageant industry does need an evolution or revolution. And I think at this stage, no thoughts are off limit. It's just a question of how are we going to implement them. But that's enough said. I'll leave it there for this week. I hope you have a great week. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.